You hear me? Morning.
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. I was trying to test the video. I'm assuming uh, I will be able to run it because now I don't see my face.
Yeah, I can hear you. I can't see you.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, this is Bridget. Can anyone hear me? Hello?
Yes, I can hear.
Thank you. I'm trying to make sure I have to present today. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Eric Blank, and this is the Commissioners' Weekly Meeting for Wednesday, March 26th. Commissioner Gilman, any preliminary remarks? Are you ready to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Good morning. I would vote to approve the consent agenda.
Commissioner Plant?
Good morning. I would also approve the consent agenda.
As would I. Let's turn to proceeding number 23A0633G, Black Hills Clean Heat Plan. Mr. Mendelson, Ms. Dundas.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. I'm Mike Mendelson of your advisory team. I'll be joined by Ms. Dundas of Commission Counsel. On March 4th, 2025, Black Hills Gas Corp. filed an application for rehearing, re-argument, or reconsideration regarding the Commission's decision C-25-0091 and its Clean Heat Plan proceeding, number 23A0633G. In that decision, the Commission modified a comprehensive but non-unanimous settlement joined by UCA staff and CEO, which was originally approved via recommended decision R240784. The settlement set a 2025 to 2027 budget of $18.4 million, including $13.2 million for DSM, $3.5 million for leak detection technologies known as AMLD, $1 million for the procurement of renewable natural gas or RNG, $455,000 for a thermal pilot feasibility study, and $100,000 for disproportionately impacted community engagement and outreach. SWEEP opposed the settlement and filed exceptions, suggesting about a budget nearly 3 times the size. While the Commission upheld the settlement budget, it made several modifications to the settlement, 2 of which Black Hills contests through its RRR application. Black Hills states that if it does not get the requested relief, it will walk away from the settlement. The company also argues the Commission should provide for additional process to evaluate other appropriate changes to the settlement to rebalance the outcome. Black Hills raises two primary issues. One, that gas DSM expenditure should not be limited to building shell measures, as this is contrary to the plain language of the relevant statute, which is 40-1-1026. And B, that the Commission should reconsider requiring the company, a gas-only utility, to include substantial electrification. On March 17th, SWEEP filed a motion for leave to respond in a response to the company's RRR, which advisors and counsel will come back to. Regarding the first objection in the company's RRR in the decision at paragraph 37, the Commission raised concerns that DSM expenditures are being used to replace gas furnaces and other appliances without a demonstrated emission reduction improvement. The Commission found it appropriate to restrict the expanded DSM funding approved in this CHP to weatherization and envelope-related initiatives only. Black Hills argues in its RRR that the Clean Heat statute defines clean heat resource to include gas demand-side management programs, and thus the decision is contrary to the plain language of the statute and even contradictory to the decision itself, which states a variety of clean heat resources is appropriate. Further, the company argues that the Commission's decision would actually increase emissions based on its preliminary modeling. With respect to the second RRR objection, the Commission found it appropriate to expand the company's beneficial electrification program from the small community of Rocky Ford, with only 2,000 customers that rely on Black Hills for both gas and electric service. SWEEP argued in its exceptions that the Clean Heat statute makes no distinction between gas-only and dual fuel utilities as to which clean heat resources are available to each. The Commission agreed, found that offering BE rebates is no different than other DSM offerings, which similarly reduce a customer's total natural gas usage, that BE provides a path for reducing greenhouse gas emissions at a reasonable cost, and ordered Black Hills to offer electrification rebates to all of its 200,000 plus customers. In the decision, the Commission noted it cannot ascertain, based on the evidentiary record available, how much money was available under the cost cap for BE implementation, but that limiting DSM to weatherization and envelope-related measures frees up some funds allocable to BE. In its RRR, the company indicated that only $1.55 million of the clean heat DSM funds would likely be used for weatherization and envelope measures, thus placing $11.6 million into this newly created BE program. According to the company's calculations, the funding switch results in 34% less emission reductions and a less cost-effective portfolio. The company notes that the 2021 legislative session produced 3 related statutes: the Clean Heat Statute, SB 21264, HB 21-1238, and SB 21246. According to the company, HB 21-1238 is focused on gas utilities, while SB 21246 is focused on electric utilities and is not relevant to gas-only utilities. According to Black Hills, SB 21246 requires the Commission to allow electric utilities, not gas-only utilities, to offer incentives to their customers to replace gas appliances with high-efficiency electric appliances. Black Hills contends the Commission must presume that the legislature passed all 3 statutes with deliberate and full knowledge of existing law applicable to the same subject. If the legislature intended to mandate gas-only utilities like Black Hills Colorado Gas to implement electrification, they would have done so in SB 21246. Further, Black Hills argues the Clean Heat Statute lists 8 resources that qualify within the definition of clean heat resource, allowing the utility CHP to incorporate any one or combination of those 8 resources. Colorado law authorizes but does not require gas utility CHPs to include every one of those 8 resources, according to Black Hills. According to the company, mandating electrification rebates is forced electrification. The decision forces the company to offer rebates for a service that it does not provide. Further, the decision forces customers to subsidize the cost for other customers who choose to convert from gas to electric, effectively eliminating their ability to decide whether to pay for electrification. Forcing gas customers to pay a rate that is intended to electrify other customers that does not accurately reflect the cost of service rendered, and it reduces the company's opportunity to recover its fixed costs and earn a reasonable return. The company continues suggesting that cross-subsidization between gas and electric customers is axiomatic to the Commission's core mission, forcing the remaining gas customers to pay the increased fixed cost and forcing remaining customers to subsidize departing customer is no longer rendering service, for which the company is no longer rendering services inconsistent with the bedrock requirement the utility rates accurately reflect the cost of providing the service, the utility rendered service. According to Black Hills, the decision relied on biased modeling. The company notes that the decision cites the sweep's testimony to support its finding to require BE broadly. Black Hills argues the decision was in contrast to the evidentiary record, which was replete with evidence. Black Hills argues sweep's analysis was skewed by using too optimistic electric and emission rates. Black Hills suggests the Commission's decision fails to address important policy considerations, including aligning 23 different electric service providers that overlap with Black Hills gas service territory would be difficult and administratively burdensome, that there is no evidence in the record to support the finding that electrification reduces net greenhouse gas emissions over the lifetime of the conversion, reduces societal costs, or provides for more efficient utilization of grid resources, especially considering the resource portfolio overlapping electric utilities, is not understood. And since the Commission does not regulate municipal utilities, it cannot easily determine if these smaller entities can actually meet the power needs of newly electrified customers. The company further argues that the Commission's decision is based in part on a citation error, took other facts out of context, was contrary to the findings in the recommended decision, and was generally in contrast with the purpose of clean heat. Overall, the company argues the settlement was in the public interest and should be restored. On March 17th, Sweep filed a motion for leave to respond, in which it argues that a response is appropriate because Black Hills included new facts not in evidence, specifically that BH's modeling purports to show an increase in emissions under the Commission's exception decision. Sweep suggests this analysis is new and unreliable, It also argues that in denying Black Hill's Triple R application, the Commission should clarify and explain that DSM measures should also include pipe insulation, smart thermostats, advanced controls, faucet aerators, and other water-saving measures and waste heat recovery. SWEEP suggests such measures are consistent with the Commission's intent of the decision to extend energy efficiency without reliance on natural gas, and that the company should work with stakeholders to refine the list. Black Hills filed a response to on March 24th, yesterday, to SWEEP's motion for leave to reply. Black Hills opposes SWEEP's motion and points out that any new facts in their Triple R filing were in direct response to the Commission's decision to file an updated version of the CHP that reflects the exceptions decision, including budget and emission effects. Black Hills argues that SWEEP's motion grossly mischaracterizes the preliminary modeling provided by the company in its Triple R, which aligns with the direction included in the Commission decision. Finally, Black Hills argues that the motion's proposal to require the company to work with stakeholders to develop the list of measures that are eligible for clean heat DSM funding is wholly inappropriate at this stage of the proceeding, and that SWEEP had an opportunity to file Triple R and seek clarification of the decision. It failed to do so and now seeks to clarify the decision through its motion, which does not meet the standard of Rule 1506B. So the first decision point is whether to grant SWEEP's motion to respond and consider its reply in your deliberations. Advisors note that no responses to Triple R are allowed by Commission regulation, and that any motion for leave to respond must demonstrate a material misrepresentation of a fact in the record, or an incorrect statement or error of law, or an attempt to introduce facts not in evidence. I'll pause here for your discussion and vote, and can answer any questions you may have.
Commissioner Gilman, do you have thoughts on the SWEEP motion? Do you want to hear a recommendation from Mr. Mendelson or council? What's your preference?
I think we can go to a recommendation on this.
Yeah, Ms. Dundas, Mr. Mendelson, do you want to give us a recommendation?
I'll pass the baton to Ms. Dundas on this one.
Sure. Thanks, commissioners. As Mr. Mendelson just said, pursuant to Rule 1506B, no response to an application to Triple R may be filed except upon motion. And then even with a motion, it must demonstrate an attempt to introduce facts not in evidence, newly discovered facts, or misstatements. I'd recommend denying the motion for leave to respond. SWEEP's filing raises new issues that would be ripe for adjudication, such as the definition of DSM. And also, while they may have a point that there's some new information in Black Hills' Triple R, that information is responsive to the Commission's decision to order an updated clean heat filing in the exceptions decision. So I do not believe SWEEP met the standard under Rule 1506B.
Commissioner Gilman,
I agree. Thanks, Ms. Dundas.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
as do I.
Okay, so the second decision point for you is whether to grant Black Hills Triple R. I presented the arguments. I'll pause here for your discussion or vote and can answer any questions you have.
Yeah, I'll just start out with a couple comments and then turn it over to you guys. On the B, I'm concerned that we won't get the results we hope, having the utility implement a program that it believes is so against its financial and other interests. Also, given everything else going on, I'm reluctant to reopen this process in a way that will likely need significant commissioner oversight, which I think staying with our initial decision would require. It just doesn't seem reasonable to say that we're modifying a settlement agreement when we're shifting the majority of the funding to a different purpose that the utility so strongly opposes. So I'm struggling to support our prior decision, although I still understand why we might narrow the DSM measures that qualify, but I don't have a clear path forward and want to hear what you guys think. So with that, Commissioner Gilman, curious to hear where you're at.
Thanks. I wish I had something far more enlightening, but I don't. Yeah, I mean, it appears the path forward from here is likely to either, reverse our decision on exceptions and essentially accept the settlement agreement, perhaps with some of the modifications that are undisputed from our previous discussion, or likely to reopen and rehear some of these issues. Look, I agree with you in terms of is policy direction here really successful if it essentially directs the company to offer a program that we have or programs that we have every indication they don't want to, may not be incredibly capable of offering on a voluntary basis to their customers. And I take that for what it is. I think it could be very hard to get progress on beneficial electrification through Black Hills, especially given their significant resistance to it. And I agree with you, the commission calendar is quite challenging coming up if we are to look at a time to rehear this. So I found myself really poring over the settlement testimony, trying to figure out, can I get to a place where I think the settlement agreement is in the public interest? If that's the other avenue. To me, a lot of the settlement testimony seems to indicate at least several parties really kind of viewed the settlement agreement as a bit of a near-term punt. But on long-term issues, even in settlement testimony by settling parties, they pointed out that the degree to which Black Hills could rely predominantly on DSM in the future is going to be significantly limited, right? This is not a long-term strategy in any way, and it doesn't even seem like many of the settling parties see it as that. So it's difficult to see how this improves. Where I agree with you, if we go forward and rehear it, how do we get, I think, the progress we're looking for on going forward? But I don't see many solid steps, even in the settlement agreement, to ensure the next time a clean heat plan is litigated, that it cures some of what I see as really major deficiencies here. At the end of the day, the commission's rules indicate that the approval of a clean heat plan should be found to be in the public interest, in evaluating several criteria, including whether the plan achieves the clean heat targets using clean heat resources that in aggregate maximize greenhouse gas reductions, and whether the plan can be implemented at the lowest reasonable cost and rate impact. And I think SWEEP has put forward some reasonable analysis showing that BE is likely one of the most cost-effective resources, and yet is generally absent from the plan as a strategy. And given Black Hills general arguments against BE, I'm not sure how that ever budgets, how we ever break through that dam, whether it's more adjudication in this proceeding or in the next adjudication. There's nothing really in the settlement agreement that leads me to think we would be on that path to have a really kind of intellectually honest comparison of all of the clean heat resources to determine what is in the best interest of Black Hills gas customers to get these reductions at the lowest cost. So we're in a pretty tough spot here. I'm not sure, honestly, how either path gets us to that comparison that really maximizes savings and minimizes costs for those Black Hills gas customers. I think what it comes down to is looking at these two divergent paths. Unfortunately, in a very rigid analytical way, I'll say I don't see how I get to saying that the settlement agreement is in the public interest. That is a determination that I think would be very difficult to make based upon what I've seen.
I share your unhappiness and have one suggestion that may not be fully developed, but before I put that out there, I'd love to hear what you think, Commissioner Plant.
Yeah, thanks. I'm sort of in a similar place to Commissioner Gilman. I find a few things that are troubling about both the settlement and also Black Hills's response to our order. I I feel as though there's a real disconnect between the company's understanding of what a DSM plan is for and what a clean heat plan is for. And I feel as though they are using a clean heat plan basically as another DSM plan, but that's not the objective of the clean heat plan. I think that they misrepresent the statute in a variety of ways, but they said that we excluded their incentives for new furnaces was contrary to the statute, but that's not what the statute says. I mean, the statute says that gas demand side management programs, as defined in section 41.1026, are clean heat resources. And if you look at that statute, it lists, it says it means any of the following programs or combination of programs: energy efficiency, including weatherization and insulation, which is exactly what we picked, conservation, load management, beneficial electrification, and demand response programs. That's what's in the clean heat statute. So what we picked were two of those things: energy efficiency for the building envelope. Beneficial electrification is actually listed twice in the clean heat resources, both under DSM programs and then identified within the list of clean heat resources. So I feel as though they're misrepresenting both the language of the statute and also the purpose of the statute. The clean heat plan is really an opportunity. I see it, as an opportunity for the gas utilities to move towards what the state has as a zero carbon goal in 2050, which is 25 years from now. 5 years from now, they're 20% of that time, they're supposed to hit a 20% reduction. It doesn't end there. We're supposed to pick, what the target is in 2035. And then, if we continue along a linear path of reduction, 2020 or 2035 would be 40%, 2040 would be 60%, 2045 would be 80%, and then you're at 100% in 2050. I mean, that's the line. And I can't see how a part of a clean heat program that would add a new gas furnace is moving towards that goal. It doesn't seem consistent with the purpose of the clean heat statute. Now, it might be consistent with the DSM program, but it's not consistent with the clean heat statute. And, part of the clean heat statute also says that the commission will maximize greenhouse gas reductions and benefits to customers while managing costs and risks to customers, including stranded asset costs and risks. And I think there's a very real reality that if you buy a furnace that's going to last 30 years and 20 years from now we have a zero carbon goal, you're investing in a stranded asset. I mean, I think, Black Hills are sort of heroes of hyperbole with their forced electrification, but you could say they're forcing stranded assets on their customers through the proposed gas DSM programs. And I would point out, just curiously, in their response to Sweep's motion, they said, as detailed in the company's RRR, no party to this proceeding proposed to eliminate all gas DSM programs from the company's DSM plan. Even they think of it as a DSM plan. It's a clean heat plan. And they keep trying to get back to this idea that it's a clean heat plan. And it seems consistent that the company sees it as just a second DSM plan. So I just don't feel as though they're meeting the objectives of the statute. I don't think they're correctly reading what the statute says are clean heat resources. I don't think they're getting close to the clean heat targets. And, Mr. Chairman, I share your concern, and I think I mentioned this in the original discussion that, I don't have a lot of confidence in them running a successful beneficial electrification rebate program. But my comfort is that if people don't take advantage of it, at least it doesn't cost them money. They're not spending money on a program, that is a part of this clean heat plan if people don't take advantage of it. But I think that at least as a part of a clean heat plan, that opportunity should be offered to their customers.
Well, I had one idea, which I'll just throw out there, and that's to maybe limit the gas DSM to building an envelope and maybe some additional efficiency measures that would limit spending. And then maybe we could open an M docket to explore third-party implementation of the beneficial electrification, maybe beyond just Black Hills, but see if we can address this problem more broadly. So that was the one idea I had. But so Commissioner Gilman, it seems like there's three choices on the table. Reopen the litigation, approve the settlement agreement, or try and find some alternative path forward, like the one I'm suggesting. If you had to pick one of those three paths, what would you pick?
No option. I mean,
Delay till next week. Is that a fourth option?
It's possible relitigation ends up with some, or rehearing ends up with some third option, right, as well, as the end state there. I think it's possible. I mean, the obvious criticism of that is it looks like far less carbon reduction in the short term, right? If you have a plan that is essentially only DSM, that's envelope, but and potentially some of the other non-equipment related items that Sweet brought up.
But but it doesn't point to a long-term solution, so do we really want to spend all this money to do something that is so suboptimal?
I know. So suboptimal, and I think, potentially enter a conflict with other funding to try to get people to electrify. If we're also promoting them to put in new furnaces and boilers that rely on gas, that's confusing for customers and potentially, presents just confusion that doesn't need to exist. I think that's a potential option. I'd have to think on what the M docket. You're saying the M docket would look to third-party implementation. I think we have another issue in that kind of a lot of the cost effectiveness assumptions and inputs here are fairly wildly different than what we've seen in other adjudications and in other forums. And that presents an ongoing issue for other clean heat plans and things going forward. So to the extent we try to deal with something in an M docket, that would have to be on the list too, to come to some reasonable understanding of what modeling inputs and assumptions may be reasonable. I get that utilities are in different places, but to see different resources come out so far differently in cost effectiveness from one analysis to another is certainly concerning in terms of what the utilities are choosing as inputs and assumptions, which can clearly sway a lot of the outputs. So that's a potential. I think I'd want to talk to Mr. Mendelson, Ms. Dundas, just a bit to see on that, and to see if that's a place we could or should go now with this record, or go to rehearing, and consider that as part of rehearing as an option.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for you.
You
Process,
may not have answers.
process one. Well, and maybe it's a question for Ms. Dundas. Is that an option for us at this point? I mean, we've issued a decision. They've issued, a rejection of the um, of the decision, and said that they're going to go to triple R, or they're gonna leave the settlement agreement if we stick with our decision. Do we have the option of providing another uh, component and then throwing that out there and seeing what happens? I don't understand what the process is on that.
Ms. Dundas?
So I'll admit this isn't a proposal that I had thought about before, but if you,
Sorry.
I think the first part the chair said was retain the DSM limitations, which was also objected to by the company and its triple R. So by modifying the decision again, I would imagine we are gonna receive another round of triple R. So it would not necessarily end the litigation of this proceeding. The reasons that the company had against that approach of limiting gas DSM to just weatherization and envelope matters, I'm sure would be raised again. You could also open an M docket to explore the third-party implementation more broadly, but as Commissioner Gilman said, I imagine that's also an issue you could have reviewed during the adjudication, but an M docket would start fresh with new parties or new stakeholders and new information.
It could be broader than just Black Hills. I mean, this is an issue everywhere. And
Yeah,
it could be broader than just natural gas. I think we're seeing similar concerns about utility implementation across the board.
that's probably something, especially if you're going to go broader than Black Hills and just this CHP, we'd probably have to put back on the agenda to open the M docket.
Yeah,
Notice
I'm
that
not suggesting we do it here.
And then I'll just remind you that our deadline for triple R is 4/3, so we can bring this back next week if you'd like to discuss more offline, or because that is a little tight, we could take a recess later in the CWM and discuss it today. But yeah, so in sum, I think it is an option available, Commissioner Plant. I don't see how it resolves this proceeding, but it is an option.
Well, it keeps it on triple R and doesn't require opening up the record. So yeah, it doesn't end the proceeding today, but it gets it on a path to resolution within the coming days. If we stick to our prior order, I think we're almost certainly going to have to open up the record. I'm sorry, Commissioner Plant.
Yeah, no, that's what I was gonna say. I guess what it does is it kind of throws the ball back into Black Hills Court to respond if they want to maintain their position, or
Yeah, I mean, again, this is not really what triple R is for, to develop the record as to different proposals. That's why more process is typically, as we always call it triple R, but one of the R's is rehearing. So yeah, we could continue to see more triple R filings and see how the record, how Black Hills responds to this one but not two modifications to the settlement. But they did.
does reconsideration include modification, or is it just changing it or not changing it?
So if you rejected Black Hills triple R today and went for additional process, it would, the recommendation would be to pick the proceeding up after rebuttal. So you would provide a limited opportunity for testimony corrections or updates and then have a hearing. So everything's fair game.
Well, Commissioner Gilman, yeah, I just can't stick with our prior order. I guess I'd either try and modify the spending down or just hold my nose and approve the settlement agreement. My ability to sustain further process given the utility difficulties of having this utility implement this spending, just gives me too much pause. But if you had to vote now, where would you come down?
Rehearing.
Commissioner Plant?
Yeah, I mean, I would support your proposal, to continue to limit the efficiency spending to the weatherization insulation, and then look at how we can get beneficial electrification more effectively provided for their customers, because I share your concern that they're not going to do a good job of it. And so we're kind of, it's almost like we're saying, yeah, you go do you go do beneficial electrification, and they're saying, okay, and it's not really going to happen. And it's kind of a kabuki theater, I mean, we want it to happen, but I don't have any confidence that they're going to do it well. So, the alternative of looking at a mechanism that maybe would do it well, and also, could provide some sort of continuity across the various different utilities that are serving their customers, electric utilities that are serving their customers. I mean, that may be a positive move forward. And I think as we're at the sort of beginning of the CHP process, this would be the time to start considering that.
Commissioner Gilman, any thoughts before I get it back to Ms. Dundas?
Yeah, I mean, look, I can see going a route where you try that, like in terms of limiting the DSM as we discussed, and trying to working out perhaps some of the BE programming issues to an M docket. It doesn't solve kind of the main controversy, I think, that Black Hills brings with regard to beneficial electrification. You're still going to face that in the next adjudication, it's really just kicking the can of that issue as well.
I mean, for me, the most compelling argument is that you have an entity implementing, a multi-million-dollar, $10 million plus program that is against its financial interests, and that'll want to see it fail. So for me, that's the major problem. What do you see as the major problem?
Well, it's just not their core argument, and I think they'll bring their core argument in the next proceeding, of course. So I think the inclusion at all of beneficial electrification will continue to be an issue. Can we solve that on rehearing and get enough information? I'm not sure, but I think additional process could be helpful, given that I don't see some of the core arguments here changing. And so to the extent we don't address them or try to enhance the record here to really better understand those issues and arguments, I think we'll just continue to face them in the next Clean Heat Plan and the next Clean Heat Plan, which may be okay. I think what you bring up in terms of implementation of the program and the lack of desire to implement the program is just a subset of their arguments against beneficial electrification. So I think the core of those arguments will continue to show up. And we don't really have a path forward on that except litigated in the next Clean Heat Plan. In terms of the modeling, the inputs, the assumptions that are wildly different from each other, from other utilities. So that's going to persist, and that will have to be faced at some point, whether it's in the next Clean Heat Plan or whether we rehear it here.
Well, for me, that's not maybe the core issue, because I think even if you solve that issue, you don't have a solution to the implementation issue.
Correct. I think they go hand in hand. But if you run an M docket to talk about implementation, and you've kind of bought onto the idea that they don't need to pursue BE in this proceeding, implement what? The question. They've not been ordered to do any BE. So there's a little bit of a chicken or an egg situation here going on. which, look, I do not love the idea. I don't love it for me or you or Mr. Mendelson or Ms. Dundas. That's why I thought rehearing might be the cleanest way to try to look at all of the issues. Because it's like the BE has multiple facets of what is really being objected to and how you would effectively implement if you went forward. And it's hard to address all of those, honestly, outside of an adjudication.
I just can't support rehearing.
Ms.
So,
Dundas, did you have? I
yeah,
didn't-
Ms. Dundas.
Yeah, thanks. Actually, Commissioner Gilman said something somewhat similar to what I was going to say, which is that fundamentally Black Hills is arguing the commission doesn't have the authority to order them to do BE, and nor can they legally implement BE for their customers. So we could or could not resolve that question in this proceeding, but if that question remains unresolved, an MDocket on implementation, my crystal ball says you'll hear similar arguments from them there, without the structure or framework of an application proceeding.
I mean, if the record supports it, I'd resolve it here. I don't know, Ms. Dundas, we're 40 minutes into this. Any advice about next steps? Mr. Mendelson?
Well, I mean, at present, it sounds like we have 2-to-1 vote to rehear it. But if the commission likes, we could bring this back next week and use the next week to discuss options with each commissioner and have another deliberation next week to finalize.
I didn't hear it was a 2-to-1, but I thought Commissioner Plant and I were on the same page. So it was a 2-1 vote to modify the settlement and send it back for RRR, not to necessarily open up the record. But I'm fine bringing it back next week. Commissioner Plant, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, part of my sort of reasoning for, going the MDocket route is maybe we can create a structure that will be more successful. And but that may, honestly, that could be something that we want to do anyway. That's not necessarily associated with this. I mean, we could.
Yeah, exactly. It's in a separate process and it's broader. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, so I get, Commissioner Gilman's point is, I think that if we take the BE component out of this, we have, a fairly limited plan that's just, a couple of pilot projects and building envelope efficiency program, and also doesn't really meet the intent of a clean heat plan. So yeah, I'm torn. I would rather have an operating working process that I had confidence in. But I also, if we have a beneficial electrification program that that people don't take advantage of, it's not like that's costing the customers any money. They're just not, they're not implementing well. Maybe they can prove that they can implement a beneficial electrification program, and we won't need our MDocket and our third-party implementation. But I'm very doubtful about that. So I think, all things being considered, I would be willing to go through the rehearing and re-argument route and just try and get this resolved once and for all. I also don't think that this precludes us from doing that MDocket separately anyway, since it's a separate process, right?
Yep, I think that's right. Well, one of you volunteer to be hearing commissioner? I don't want to do this on bug. I'm just not.
Not prepared to today, but also we can bring it back next week. I mean, it sounds like we have time, but
I think you do have a 2-to-1 vote to rehear it. We can bring it back and decide, but I can't. I'd sooner approve the settlement agreement than take this on en banc. Mr. Mendelson, final thoughts?
Oh, okay. So we will bring this back next week and discuss with the commissioners independently. In the meantime,
What are we bringing it back for, Mr. Mendelson?
I thought the commissioners wanted the opportunity to think through, but
Yeah.
I think, I mean, just speaking for myself, I like to think through what the options are, and whether a hearing commissioner approach is or en banc is necessarily the best way to go forward, and how long we think the hearing will take and when it would be scheduled and all that sort of thing, because I think all that's going to kind of go into whatever decision we come up with.
We're so small. I don't have the bandwidth to take this on. I just don't. Ms. Dundas, Mr. Mendelson, I guess we're bringing it back next week.
We can bring it back next week, but again, the deadline to mail this decision will be the next day. So to the extent we've resolved anything, we'll have to start getting that decision prepared. Or we'll have to toll the RRR deadline.
Would it be better for us to take a recess now and just come back this morning?
It's always an option as well.
Is that what you guys would like to do? I think it's going to take more than 5 or 10 minutes, especially if we have to talk sequentially. We can always toll the deadline. If it's only a week, I don't think it's that big a deal.
Okay. So then just to recap here, we have a final decision to deny Sweep's motion for leave to respond, a tentative decision to rehear it, and the terms of that rehearing will be discussed next week.
I think that's right.
Okay.
And Ms. Dundas will toll the clock next week, or should we do that now?
Let's just do it now. Commissioner Gilman, are you all right tolling the clock?
I just wanted to hear from Ms. Dundas. Can we do that without noticing that as the objective?
I think we could do it without noticing it. They're well aware that the substance of the proceeding was on the agenda. It's just that if we could still meet the deadline if this gets resolved. But
okay. But it seems like no harm done if we toll it and then meet the deadline.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Problem. Yeah, I think that would be appropriate. That way we can certainly have time to bring it back next week in a way that's appropriate.
Plan?
I agree.
As do I. All right. Proceeding number 24AL-0049G, Mr. Davis, Public Service Company of Colorado gas rate case.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Ron Davis of the Commission's advisory staff. This is the gas rate case for Public Service Company of Colorado. The case is in its very final stages. That is, the Commission established new base rates by decision number C24778. That was issued in October of last year, and Public Service filed a compliance tariff to implement the rates established by that decision, and modified base rates have been put into place for billing purposes. However, in January of this year, the Commission granted in part certain applications for reconsideration. That first round of RRR was addressed by decision number C2550 that was issued on January 24th. The Colorado Office of the Utility Consumer Advocate filed a second round of RRR to the Commission's RRR decision from January, and the Commission will rule on that second round of RRR at a future business meeting. Today, I'm presenting an unopposed motion filed by Public Service regarding the deadline for the company to file a new gas depreciation study. That study is required by commission decisions in this case and by decisions in other proceedings. The deadline for the filing was set at March 31st, or next Monday, by the decision on RRR issued in January in this case. Specifically, Public Service seeks a variance in the form of an order that the gas depreciation study can be filed no later than April 11th. Public Service points to its staff availability, current caseload, and commission directives for its present need and additional time to finalize and prepare this filing. And as I mentioned, Public Service conferred with the parties to be able to file this motion as unopposed. Public Service also states in the motion that the instant request for additional time is unrelated to the matter still at issue with respect to UCA's second application for RRR. So the decisions before you are whether to waive response time and grant or deny the motion.
Do you have a recommendation, sir?
I can provide one, yes. I recommend that the commission waive remaining response time and grant the motion.
Commissioner Gutman,
I agree.
Commissioner Plant,
I also agree.
as do I, and that can be an ABC decision, Mr. Davis. So thank you.
Thank you.
Proceeding number 24A-0442E, Public Service Company of Colorado, just transition solicitation, Mr. DeCenso.
Good morning, Commissioners. Mitchell DeCenso of your Commission Council. For decision today is whether to grant the motion for intervention out of time and for waiver of response time filed by Grid United LLC on March 21st in Public Service's Just Transition Solicitation Proceeding. Grid United is a privately owned transmission development company that states it is currently working to develop multiple projects in Colorado. Among these is a Three Corners Connector project, which is a 300-mile, 525 kilovolt high voltage direct current transmission line connecting Public Service's existing electric system near Pueblo, Colorado, with Southwest Power Pool system near Guyman, Oklahoma. Grid United states it seeks to intervene in this proceeding for the limited purpose of providing the Commission, the parties, and the public with additional information regarding the Three Corners Connector in order to help contextualize the modeling performed by Public Service in its supplemental direct testimony. Specifically, Grid United states it intends to introduce through testimony an additional study regarding the Three Corners Connector project that supports and provides context for the assumptions used by Public Service in its encompass modeling of the project. Grid United asserts it does not intend to take a position on any other issues in the proceeding and that no party opposes its motion. Grid United states it has a tangible and pecuniary interest in the outcome of this proceeding due to its commercial interest in the development of the Three Corners Connector. As the developer of the project, Grid United asserts it is the only entity positioned to provide useful information specific to the project or to advocate for the presentation of evidence or positions that affect the Three Corners Connector. I can pause here for discussion or proceed to offering a recommendation.
I think we'd welcome a recommendation.
Council recommends granting Grid United's motion to intervene and for waiver of response time. Pursuant to Rule 1401A of the Commission's Rules of Practice and Procedure, the Commission may grant a late filed intervention for good cause shown and provided the intervention satisfies Rule 1401C's substantive requirements for permissive intervention. Grid United has adequately demonstrated it meets the standards for permissive intervention and provided good cause for late intervention. Additionally, since the motion is unopposed, waiving the remaining response time as requested would be appropriate.
Makes sense to me. Commissioner Gutman,
I agree.
Commissioner Plant.
I also agree.
Thank you, Mr. DeCenso. Proceeding number 24A-0547E, Ms. Dundas, Mr. Mendelson, back for more. DS,
Yes.
Public Service Company, DSP.
Yes, good morning again, Commissioners. And if it's okay, we'll take up item number 8 regarding the VPP as well at this time.
That'd be great.
Okay. At last week's CWM, the Commission adopted in part and denied in part Public Services motion for variance regarding the Commission's request for supplemental direct testimony per decision C-25-0203I. Specifically, the Commission required the company to continue to produce a new load SEER modeling run based on revised technology loading patterns and energy growth rates. The Commission also required the company to indicate the time required to do so and confer with stakeholders of both the DSP and VPP proceedings once more to see if it could maintain the existing schedule offered in the March 14th conferral report submitted in both cases. Public Service submitted, I apologize. Sorry. Okay. Public Service submitted an updated conferral report on 324 as required. Today, there will be 6 decision points. So the first decision point is regarding whether to adopt or reject Public Service's proposed response to the Commission's remaining supplemental direct testimony requests. Public Service replied in its 324 response that the limiting remaining STD question will take roughly 2 months to complete, down from 5 originally proposed, and can submit this supplemental analysis to the record on May 19th. The company explains that the proposed variation will provide a similar analysis that will allow the Commission to understand how the lower load forecast impacts the existing capacity projects within the company's 5-year budget. The company caveats that the supplemental load SEER run will not be a variation of the one submitted with direct testimony, as it will be an adjusted live version of the model with more recent additions to the company's portfolio of feeders, banks, and substations, but will include updated load curves for water heating, space heating, EV charging, as well as the growth rates required by the Commission's STT request. The Public Service explains that, however, the lower growth rates require the company to assume no additional BE loads would be added to the system beyond currently existing levels, plus the capacity requested via already received customer capacity checks. As an aside, the company notes this treatment is inconsistent with Section 40-2-132.5-5, which requires the DSP to require sufficient distribution capacity for other state goals, including CHP. The company will then produce new 8760 load curves using this new guarantee file for load growth and revised load curve for EV charging, then reconduct its risk analysis producing the N-0 and N-1 metrics, and then applying its power by software, resulting in new projections on the timing, duration, frequency, and extent of predicted overload conditions. Public Service notes that due to the timing constraints surrounding this supplemental analysis, the company will not design new projects or revise existing scopes of work. However, they suggest such work is not necessary to understand the impacts of the changed assumptions. The company will then quantify the financial impacts of any potential avoided or deferred projects relative to the company's originally proposed base forecast. So the first decision before you today is whether to grant the company's plan to respond to the remaining contested supplemental direct testimony questions. I'll pause here for your discussion to answer any questions.
Yeah, maybe I'll go first. I'd just say I think the company's proposal gives us most of what we requested in terms of analyzing the investment impacts of an alternative load shape. So I'd accept the company's response and keep the case moving. Commissioner Gilman?
Yeah, a comment, maybe a suggestion for a modification. I generally agree. I'd like to see this variation run. And I think the way they present it, like we have time to get that into the record and it will be of benefit. But one thing that concerns me is given the combination of our request to flatten the load shapes of the different, especially BE technologies and the implementation of the lower low forecast, which the company describes in their response as essentially we won't even be able to see the impact of the flattened load shapes because the model essentially will assume there is no addition of beneficial electrification past now. because of the significant restriction on the total forecast magnitude. I'm concerned about that. I mean, especially in light of the technical conference, I'd very much like to see the difference in the shape of the load curves reflected in this run. So for me, I'd just like to see a slight modification here where we go forward with the flattened load shapes, especially for EVs, space heating, water heating, but perhaps move the forecast to including existing capacity checks, but also including the BE that's already been approved and planned as part of the approved clean heat plan, DSM, BESI, TEP, and to project those forward in a reasonable way that's kind of linear with what's already been approved. I just don't think it's, I think, as useful as we were thinking, given the company's description that you won't even really be able to decipher the difference in load curves because they just simply won't be adding any more PE, which I think is generally unreasonable in light of the other policies and plans that have been approved here and doesn't really serve our purpose to see the effect of the change in load curve. So just a suggestion so that we could actually see the utility of the difference in modifying those load curves.
So just to make sure we're all on the same page, it's relaxing the obligation to keep to the total retail sales of the lower load forecast so we can include more sales to see the impact of the lower load shape. Is that a fair characterization of the shift you're would like to see?
Yeah, that's the broad strokes, and kind of to describe what that forecast may look like, I would just characterize it as existing capacity checks, known load growth is in, as well as the impact of the approved level of BE included in the company's clean heat plan, DSM, BESI, and TEP, and kind of extrapolating those out in a reasonable way at the same pace that funding is already approved in those. I think that provides us a much more reasonable way to see the impact of those flattened load curves that were identified in the technical conference than having it go forward with a forecast that's so low that they're saying we won't even see that impact. I just don't see as much utility in that approach to us going forward.
I'm good with that. Commissioner Plant?
Yeah, I'd support that.
Mr. Memison?
Okay, so just to confirm, so the commission would essentially bless the company's approach in their response, but tell them to modify the SDG request so that it's the modified load shapes, but not the limitation on the energy growth rate.
Correct. And the actual energy growth rate would be, as Commissioner Gilman suggested, extending the TAP, the CHP, and we'd relax the constraint on sales.
Okay, understood. Okay, thank you. Okay, so the second decision point is whether to consolidate the DSP and VPP proceedings or maintain separate proceedings. Most parties support or take no position on consolidation of the proceedings. These were touched on in the last CWM. Supporting parties argue that consolidation offers an opportunity to evaluate critical planning issues holistically with the potential to mitigate costly infrastructure investment. Among those who oppose consolidation, UCA is concerned the VPP will be overshadowed by the larger DSP proceeding. Solar United Neighbors agrees and notes that the VPP includes numerous technical issues of first impression, including design and establishment of a new VPP program. ACE, incorporating COSA, SIA, and Advanced Energy United, suggests the DSP issues are not dependent on the AVPP program at all, as there is no dynamic interaction of the variables. But I'll pause here for your discussion. You can answer any questions or recommendation.
Yeah, you might give us a recommendation, and then we'll open it up for discussion.
Okay. Our advisors would recommend consolidating. We believe this offers the best opportunity to look at these issues holistically and be able to potentially reduce the infrastructure investment through alternatives to traditional expenditure.
Commissioner Gilman?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mendelson. I agree that consolidating seems to be the best path forward. I think we can certainly try our best within the hearing schedule to dedicate some time, to the best of our ability to VPP issues, although they may crop up elsewhere, certainly. But I think we've struggled over and over with how you view these issues more holistically, and I think we have an opportunity to do so here. Although the company's main description is not as using VPPs in their current planning to likely address some of these more distribution system issues. But I think this is a good opportunity to really explore that, as a use case and to better develop and understand the company's plans and capabilities to maximize the value of VPPs by including their considerations on the distribution system and its impacts. So to me, I think consolidation makes the most sense at this point.
Commissioner Plant?
Yeah, I agree. I think consolidation makes a lot of sense, and a lot of the, honestly, a lot of the tariff pricing is directed by the costs that are identified in the TSP. So I think there is a lot of sort of back and forth between these, as well as you said, potential for reducing capital costs through the VPP program. I do think, one thing that I think we can work with the parties on is how we can organize the order of testimony so that some of the issues that are really very specific to the structure of the VPP program and the tariff can get addressed as one segment of the proceeding, and focus on that. Not to say that, as you mentioned, Commissioner Gilman, that you would be excluded from talking about it later on if it came up, but just so that we could try and focus some of the conversation at certain times on specific issues for specific parties. I think that would be helpful, but I do support combining them.
As do I, and I totally agree with Commissioner Plant about the benefits of trying to segregate the hearing and the discussion on separate issues, but I don't quite know how to do that now, and not sure we can decide that now. So let's consolidate, Mr. Mendelson, and over time, let's figure out the best way of conducting the hearing efficiently, depending on what witnesses and answer testimony we get.
Okay, yeah, you're slightly ahead of where I'm, but that's fine. The next issue is to adopt or reject the conferral schedule and the hearing process. So the next item would be to adopt or reject the conferral schedule that was originally proposed on 3/14 with the addition of the supplemental analysis arriving May 19th. With respect to the hearing process, certain parties who oppose consolidation suggest the commission hold a staged hearing addressing AVPP issues on specific days, as it will minimize burden on the commission and other parties. In particular, ACE proposes that AVPP specific testimony will be submitted as separate pre-filed exhibits with unique hearing exhibit numbers, and that parties will only be allowed to cross-examine witnesses on AVP testimony during the AVPP hearing times, and vice versa for the TSP. They also suggest that the AVPP hearing take place on August 25th through the 27th. In the updated conferral document, Public Service reported that staff strongly opposes this concept because it is likely to cause unnecessary confusion and inefficiencies while raising potential due process concerns by impeding parties' ability to effectively advocate for their positions. A bifurcated approach may require multiple witnesses, they say, to testify twice, resulting in duplicated time and effort for all parties to the proceeding and limiting the commission's flexibility to manage the hearing efficiently. Staff suggests a consolidated hearing will be more streamlined while still allowing interveners to use their time to address VPP issues as they see fit. Boulder raises similar concerns but remains open to alternative procedural mechanisms. So the decision point before you now is really two parts. A, do you adopt the schedule from the 314 conferral report with the May 19th supplemental analysis deadline? And B, do you apply the strict hearing protocol suggested by ACE or offer a more loosely based hearing protocol, perhaps intending certain days in the first week of hearings for VPP issues?
Yeah, I think we better take the looser approach for now and see how it evolves. So that's probably where I am, more like the staff approach, and then we'll do our best to manage the hearing as they suggest, but probably not so rigidly. But Commissioner Gilman, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we need to give the warning now 5 months in advance, but I think it's reasonable to try our best to carve out time that's dedicated to the VPP issue and VPP specific witnesses. I think there's probably some reasoning to do that likely at the beginning of the hearing so that it doesn't just come up in a million different places first, try to really have it out on the VPP issue. I don't think it's our intent at all to have witnesses testify multiple times. I mean, perhaps like one circumstance with public services kind of main crossover witness, but other witnesses, I don't think we have any intent to have them testify more than once. And then there wouldn't be any prohibition to bringing this up otherwise, but really the intended focus time. So, I mean, to me, I think it would be fine to signal that I think the beginning of the hearing is probably the most reasonable for this, but we can certainly refine those plans as we get closer in the 5 months that we have before the hearing actually starts.
Yeah, or at least post the rebuttal testimony. Commissioner Plant?
Yeah, I agree.
Mr. Mendelson, Ms. Dundas?
All righty.
Yeah, thanks. Just before Mr. Mendelson continues, I'm just going to add to that decision point and discussion that the commissioners should also include in this decision their typical hearing en banc virtual hearing exhibits and guidance. There's attachments A and B to our typical decisions. And in that, we'll update it to make clear that the DSP is the main proceeding and that the hearing exhibits will be, each party will receive one hearing exhibit block and that the exhibits are exhibits to both proceedings. I think they might need some clarity that we'll put in the decision because the typical order of the hearing blocks won't work with this consolidated proceeding.
That works for me. Commissioner Gilman?
Yeah, thanks, Ms. Dundas.
Commissioner Plant?
I agree.
Mr. Mendelson?
Alrighty. So the next issue is consolidation of DDG issues. In Order C-250154I, the Commission prompted parties on the appropriate proceeding the company's DDG proposal in response to SB 24207 is heard. At present, DDG capacity is place marked in the JTS proceeding, but the company is expected to formally propose its DDG offering as part of its RESA application in the next week or so. In particular, the Commission asked parties whether a single solicitation, either the JTS or DSP, can reasonably facilitate the company's obligations under SB 24207. The company explains that it does not believe consolidation of DDG with AVPP proceeding would be appropriate as the two proceedings are on relatively different size scales. Per the DDG related statute, the company is required to procure at least 50 megawatts per year in summer of 2026 and 2027. Per the AVPP program, individual DERs must be 500 kilowatts or less and aggregated by qualified resource aggregators. Pivot suggests the DSP is the best venue for effectuation of the DDG and VPP programs, as the animating purposes of the DSP is diversification of energy supply through distributed energy and expanding the utilization of non-wire alternatives, that may reduce the need for conventional distribution grid investment. Despite opposing consolidation of the DSP and VPP proceedings, ACE supports DSP and DDG consolidation. ACE suggests the DSP proceeding represents the optimal opportunity for the Commission to implement the DDG requirements of SB 24207 and realize the full potential of DDG resources. I can pause here for your discussion or can provide a recommendation.
If you can give us a recommendation, that'd be great.
Surely. We would note that that the company's res filing is due soon, where the Commission will get an initial impression of the DDG strategy, and that we only received 3 replies to the Commission's prompts in our recent order, and there was a lot that asked of the different stakeholders to comment on. Accordingly, we would recommend not acting on DDG issues at this time. Advisors can bring back this issue for further consideration. In the meantime, parties should be welcome to provide further guidance if desired.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Let's see what gets filed. Let's see what the timeframes are. I mean, in a perfect world, it'd be great to consolidate, but it just may not work in this world. Commissioner Gilman?
Yeah, I agree with you. At this particular point, it seems a little premature. We don't even have anything filed for the DDG. I agree with you. I could see likely some merit and arguments to combine. There might be a timing issue. And so I think there's a lot to figure out, but we can't figure any of it out before it's filed. So I think ideally we'll hear more from the parties after it's filed and be able to take this up again to evaluate it once we have some real information and real filing.
Commissioner Plant?
Yeah, I agree with that approach. And, as much as I see how the DDG integrates with the DSP and the VPP, I think we've exceeded our limit of 3-letter acronyms in one proceeding.
One lifetime. Mr. Mendelson, Ms. Nundas.
Okay, so the next couple of issues should be quick. The next issue is regarding the procedural rules for discovery. The 314 conferral report suggested no changes to the PMP rules. But in the Monday filing, the company asked that discovery on the supplemental May 19th analysis be conducted with a 7-day turnaround that would be applied to discovery directed solely at that supplemental analysis filed on May 19th. So does the Commission approve of the proposed discovery rules?
Commissioner Gilman?
Yes.
Commissioner Plant?
I agree.
As do I.
All righty. And then the last issue is whether to extend the deadline for decision 130 days, consistent with Commission rules.
That seems like an easy one to me. Commissioner Gilman?
I agree.
Commissioner Plant?
I also agree.
I think that can be. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to ask Ms. Dundas if she had any cleanup on any of these issues.
Nope, I think that's good. So we'll have 2 ABC decisions, one in the DSP that grants in part that motion for variance with the updated guidance today on supplemental direct, sets a procedural schedule, consolidates, provides guidance to the parties on hearing parameters, and then a second decision in the VPP setting the procedural schedule, consolidating the matters, and indicating that the DSP will be the main docket here on out.
That's right to me. Commissioner Gilman?
I agree.
Commissioner Plant?
I also agree.
All right. Thanks,
Great.
guys. Appreciate it. Proceeding number 25AL-0088E, Black Hills ECA. Mr. Lay, Mr. Rivera-Lugo.
Good morning, Commissioners. I have a few acronyms in here, I'm sorry to say, but just a couple. But anyway, my name's Ron Lay. I'm with PUC staff, and I'll be presenting on advice letter number 882. submitted by Black Hills Colorado Electric, proposing to revise the Energy Cost Adjustment Rate, or ECA, for the second quarter of 2025 to be effective April 1st through June 30th, 2025. Black Hills is proposing an ECA rate of 0.04154 per kWh for the second quarter of 2025. This represents an increase of 11.85% or 0.0044 per kWh for all retail customers from the current rate of 0.03714 per kWh. If permitted to go into effect, the tariff revisions will increase annualized revenues by approximately $8.2 million. Black Hills has stated that there are two main drivers behind the increase in this quarter's ECA rate. First, the recovery true-up balance increased by approximately $6.3 million, mainly due to increases in the actual generation cost and actual purchase power cost. Second, the company updates the incentive sharing calculation once per year with each second quarter ECA filing. Based on this proposed increase, the average residential customer monthly bill under rate schedule RS1 with an average usage of 600 kWh per month will increase $2.77 from $106.7 to $109.47, or 2.6%. The average small commercial customer bill under rate schedule SGSN with an average usage of 2,300 kWh per month will increase $10.63 from $348.37 to $359, or 3.05%. And I can pause here for questions now or proceed to the recommendation.
And if you can give us your recommendation, that'd be great.
Great. Staff has reviewed the advice letter, the accompanying tariffs, and the work papers provided with no material issues found. Staff recommends the commission take no further action to allow this advice letter to go into effect by operation of law.
Thank you, Mr. Lay. That works for me. Commissioner Gilman.
I agree.
Commissioner Plant.
I also agree.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate
Thanks.
it. Let's go on to the next item, which is proceeding number 25AL-0089E. Mr. Rivera Lugo, ECA for Public Service.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Commissioners. Luis Rivera Lugo with Commission staff, presenting proceeding 25AL-0089E concerning advice letter number 1978 Electric, filed February 28, 2025 by Public Service Company of Colorado to update its quarterly electric commodity adjustment, or ECA, applicable to all electric base rate schedules. Effective April 1st, 2025, the ECA factors will increase from those currently in effect, excluding the EDR rates, which are decreasing. Contemporaneously with this advice letter, the company filed a motion for an alternative form of notice, which was duly approved by Interim Commission Decision C25-0187-I, effective March 18, 2025. On March 17, Public Service filed an amended advice letter to correct an error in the original application that left out the company's deferred account balance of approximately $24 million under-collected as of January 31st from the new ECA factors computation. The quarterly ECA adjustment reflects updated fuel, purchase energy, and wheeling costs projected for the period from April 1st through June 30th, 2025, the related ECA deferred account balance as of January 31st, and the following required Commission-approved ECA formula components. First one is the Rush Creek Wind Project's capital cost sharing, Cheyenne Ridge and Rush Creek Wind Project's production tax credits, the deferred tax assets revenue requirement, the Renewable Connect Program subscription payments, the Renewable Energy Standard Adjustment net average incremental debit, the Western Energy Imbalance Service entry and administrative fees amortization, the Medical Exemption Program lost revenues, customers' retail share of the short-term sales trade margin earned by the company in 2024, the IVVO energy reduction benefit for 2023, and finally, the estimated EDR revenue credit. Pursuant to settlement agreement approved by Commission Decision R20-0108, the company includes as part of its quarterly ECA filings certain additional operational system reports to assist the Commission in its monitoring of its transition to a more renewable, less fossil-based generation fleet. As usual, this information is contained in Exhibit number 10 to PSCO's filing. Public Service is requesting the ECA factors for the second quarter of 2025 to be increased 15.6% from the current residential rate of 2.694 cents per kilowatt hour to the proposed 3.113 cents. The average residential customer's monthly bill will increase by 2.78% or $2.56. For small commercial customers, PSCO is requesting the ECA factors for the second quarter of 2025 to be increased 14.6% from the current commercial rate of 2.843 cents per kilowatt hour to the proposed 3.33 cents. The average small commercial customer's monthly bill will increase by 3.71% or $4.52, all of which translates into a projected increase of approximately $32 million in Public Services second quarter 2025 revenues. I can now proceed with my recommendation unless you have any questions.
If you can go to your recommendation, that'd be great.
Sure. Staff has reviewed the advice letter and its amendment, the accompanying tariffs, and its supporting work papers with no material issues found. We recommend the Commission take no further action to allow this advice letter as amended to go into effect by operation of law.
Commissioner Gilman.
I agree.
Commissioner Plant.
I also agree.
As do I. Thank you, sir. Proceeding number 25AL-0090G, Ms. McGee.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Bridget McGee with Commission staff. Proceeding number 25AL-0090G, advice letter number 54, was filed by Black Hills, Colorado Gas Utility, or Black Hills Gas Cost Adjustment Filing, or GCA, for the second quarter of 2025 to be effective April 1st of 2025. In the filing, Black Hills is proposing to decrease revenues by $15.7 million. Black Hills is also proposing to terminate the Extraordinary Gas Cost Recovery Rider, or the EGCRR, for the Central and North and Southwest region effective April 1st, 2025. Black Hills noted that the termination is 10 days earlier than originally anticipated, and the company projects that the EGCRR will be slightly over-collected. March 11, 2025, Black Hills amended advice letter 54 to address the anticipated over-recovery of the EGCRR. Black Hills amended advice letter number 54 to explain that the under-collected balance as of March 31st, 2025 on the EGCRR will be credited or debited in the deferred component of the gas cost adjustment filed that will be filed in September 2025. If there are no questions, staff is ready to make a recommendation.
I think we're ready for your recommendation.
Staff recommends that the Commission take no action and allow this advice letter to go into effect by operation of law.
Thanks, Ms. McGee, and just pleased to see where we finally got Storm Uri behind us, and rates and bills are going down. So, or at least bills. Commissioner Gilman.
Yeah, I agree with the recommendation.
Commissioner Plant.
I also agree.
Thank you, Ms. McGee.
Thank you.
Proceeding number 20. Nope, we already did that one. Let's keep going. The 25A-0069E Barker Substation CPCN. Mr. Davis.
Yes, on February 10th, Public Service Company of Colorado filed an application for a certificate of public convenience and necessity for facilities associated with the Barker substation. This would be a new substation intended to increase capacity of the network distribution system serving downtown Denver. The project would be located near Coors Field on property already owned by the company from a 1990 purchase. Public Service explains that the project is needed to satisfy growth and demand caused by population increases, high-density demand, new all-electric residential building codes, and successful urban revitalization efforts. It entails above-ground substation transmission facilities, distribution transformers and capacity banks, a 2,000-foot double-circuit 230 kV underground transmission line connecting to an existing substation, and that is to be located under 20th Street. Construction began in October on the underground transmission line, and work on the substation began in February. Certain facilities are expected to go into service at the beginning of 2027. The project is expected to cost approximately $214 million, with about $100 million of that related to the transmission line and the transmission substation facilities. Public Service states that although the company was able to defer the need for the substation project by 12 years, the costs for the materials, equipment, and labor required to construct the project have escalated during that time. Public Service intends to recover the costs associated with the transmission elements of the project through its transmission cost adjustment, or TCA. The company further anticipates to recover the distribution costs associated with the project through its proposed Grid Modernization Adjustment Clause, or GMAC. An approval of that is pending in the ongoing case in proceeding 24A 547E. Public Service clarifies that it's not requesting an advanced rebuttable presumption of prudence for its cost estimates in this proceeding. Public Service says that that's consistent with the approved cost treatment by the Commission in recent transmission CPCN proceedings. Instead, Public Service states that it will bear the burden of demonstrating the reasonableness and prudence of the costs in the applicable future rate case proceeding. Notably, Public Service states that the Commission twice previously determined that no CPCN would be required for this project, even after the project costs increased due to expanded scope. Nevertheless, Public Service is requesting a CPCN by this instant filing. The company states it's now appropriate to transparently bring forward more detailed information justifying the need for the project, demonstrating that existing facilities are not reasonably adequate and available to meet the need, and presenting the evaluation of alternatives in light of the increased costs. As the Commission has previously recognized, Public Service states, a need finding is implicitly contingent on certain cost expectations. Public Service filed the application with the direct testimony of 4 witnesses. On February 24th, UCA filed an intervention as of right and request for hearing. UCA seeks to examine whether the cost increase from $18.1 million in the company's 2017 Rule 3206 report up to $214 million now is reasonable, whether the use of higher cost gas-insulated switchgear is necessary and reasonable, whether the use of an underground double-circuit transmission line is reasonable, given that the company has represented that underground double-circuit alternatives are not viable for other lines previously, whether some of the equipment can be deferred until later to reduce the costs now, and whether the proposed cost recovery mechanisms are reasonable. Staff filed an intervention as of right on March 21st. Staff states that it is not in a position at this time to state whether it supports or opposes the application, but staff does list some areas of inquiry, such as whether the expanded scope of the original substation design is still justified with these higher costs, whether estimated rate impacts, including those arising from the use of the TCA and the GMAC, are reasonable, whether ratepayers outside of the lower downtown Denver or Barker substation service area should be responsible in whole or part for paying for these upgrades, and whether the cost estimates are accurate and sufficiently developed, especially considering ongoing global supply chain challenges, inflationary pricing pressures, and unknown impact of possible tariffs on material and equipment costs. Staff also raises questions about whether the project management plan is sufficiently developed to minimize project delays and to maintain any sort of cost control. And in accordance with the Commission's rules, the staff has interest in determining whether the magnetic field and noise level mitigation measures are adequate to grant the company's request for no additional mitigation measures. And finally, whether the company's assessment of alternatives and the potential use of advanced transmission technologies is sufficient. So the decision for you to make this morning is whether to deem the application complete and set the application for hearing. And if you do decide to set it for hearing, the question is who should conduct that hearing.
Do you have a recommendation, Mr. Davis?
Well, I can say that no party, including staff, identified any deficiency in the application, so there appears to be no cause to prevent the deeming of the application filing complete. Staff in UCA provides sufficient cause for setting the matter for hearing, and I can provide information on current and pending cases if that would be useful for your decision on whether to send the case to an ALJ.
And I just had one question for you. Did you say they started construction already?
Yes, they do say they've started construction, but again, I think that's because the company's filed the CPCN out of, I think, an abundance of caution, given the commission's recent statements that need is a function of cost. But it already has at least two decisions that say no CPCN is needed, and so I think it could be argued it already has authority to begin construction.
All right. I guess I support your recommendation and would refer to an ALJ, maybe with a written order asking them to see if a PIM would be appropriate to help control costs, given the increased cost by a factor of 10. So, Commissioner Gilman?
Yeah, I agree with the general recommendations, and I think that's a fine issue to bring up as a potential suggestion for cost control.
Commissioner Plant?
I also agree.
Does that give you what you need, Mr. Davis?
Is the directive to the parties to address a PIM? Is it a supplemental direct testimony requirement? Is there any clarification you'd like to give on that, or is it just an expression of interest in a PIM in the written decision?
Yeah, it's a request for the ALJ to explore whether that would be a useful approach.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Proceeding number 25L-0107G, CNG, GCA. Welcome back, Mr. Lay.
Good. How are you, Commissioner? Again, Ron Lay with the PC staff. I'll be presenting the next three items, just so you know. This one being 25L-0107G, or the application received from Colorado Natural Gas on March 14th, 2025, requesting an order from the Commission to revise its gas cost adjustment rates effective April 1st. This request was made on less than statutory notice. CNG has 4 zones for GCA purposes: Bailey, Pueblo West, Cripple Creek, and Eastern Colorado. And the GCA has 3 main components. First, the projected gas commodity cost based on forecasted sales, contract terms, and market indices in addition to upstream cost. Second, the deferred gas cost, or account number 191 balance, in this case is of June 2024, adjusted for unbilled revenue. And third, the projected cost allocations. The cumulative effect of the GCA rate changes in the deferred account balance will result to an increase in revenue in the Bailey division by approximately $680,509, or 11.97%. An increase in the revenue in the Pueblo West division by $465,094, or 24.55%. Increase in the Cripple Creek by $68,862, or 3.92%, and an increase in revenue in the Eastern Colorado division of $233,138, or 19.26%. This represents a total increase of $1,447,603, or 13.72%. CNG claims that these increased costs are primarily driven by lower volume purchases and higher upstream costs. I can pause for questions now or proceed to the recommendation.
Now, if you can give us your recommendation, that'd be great.
Sure. Staff has reviewed the filing and has found it contains all necessary exhibits with no material issues found. Staff recommends that the application be deemed complete and that the application be granted on less than statutory notice.
Commissioner Gilman.
Yeah, I agree. The fairly dramatic commodity price increase in the state, Mr. Lay.
Yeah, it's really the area is what they're saying. You know, it's the delivery.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing like a 20 to 70% increase in commodity costs here in the off season. So luckily, it doesn't seem like people will be using a ton of heat in this season, but still kind of just struck by a dramatic increase in commodity costs here, not even in the cold season. So that's the only comment. You all have reviewed it. I believe you, so I'm fine with your recommendation, but it was a notable increase for sure.
I understand.
Commissioner Plant?
I agree.
As do I. You want to go to the next one? Mr. Lay, 108G, Piesco.
Yeah, so this is the proceeding number 25L0108G, the application received from Public Service Company on March 14th, 2025, requesting an order for the commission to revise its gas cost adjustment rates with an effective date for April 1st, 2025. Public Service requests the verified application be granted on less than statutory notice and is also seeking a variance in this proceeding related to the incorporation of the approved gas price risk management or GPRM plan approved by the Commission in decision number C230796 and proceeding number 23A0330533G. PESCO proposes to change the gas commodity cost to reflect an increase in the forecasted cost of natural gas for the months of April, May, and June 2025 to be charged by the numerous producers and suppliers based on forecasted sales quantities, producer-supplier contract terms, and market indices. The following are just some of the market factors existing as of March 3rd of this year that PESCO has stated as affecting the natural gas market prices used in this filing. First, since January 2023, first quarter 2025 NYMEX contract prices are trending up. Prices were as low as $2.71 per MMBTU in November of 2024 before reaching a peak average price in later February 2025 near $4.30 per MMBTU. Second, colder temperatures experienced across much of the United States from mid-January to late February led to higher prices along with freeze-offs hitting gas production. Third, aggregate U.S. storage inventory for the week ending February 25th, 2025 at 1,840 BCF was 23.4% less than last year and 11.5% less than the previous 5-year average for the same week. The change in revenue resulting from the proposed first quarter of 2024 GCA rates is an increase of $16,988,816 in PESCO's April through June 2025 revenue when compared to the revenue that would be collected under the currently effective GCA rates. You can pause now for questions or proceed to staff's recommendation.
If you can go to the recommendation, that'd be great.
Sure. Staff has reviewed the filing. It's found it contains all necessary exhibits and no material errors. Staff recommends that the application be deemed complete and that the application be granted on less than statutory notice. In addition, concurrent with its application, Public Service also filed a motion for alternative form of notice. Commission Counsel has reviewed the motion and recommends granting the motion pursuant to Section 40-3-1041CIE. Commission Counsel Watt Foreman is available to discuss this further if you'd like.
Commissioner Gutman?
I agree.
Commissioner Plant?
I also agree.
As do I. 25L-0109ST, Public Service Steam Cost Adjustment.
You be the last one. Okay, here we go. Application was received from Public Service Company requesting an order for the Commission to revise the steam cost adjustment, in this case rates, with an effective date of April 1st, 2025. Public Service requests the verified application be granted on less than statutory notice. As well in this case, currently there are two components to the SCA, the current steam cost, the fuel cost, and the deferred steam cost. These two components are added together to produce the SCA rate. In this filing, there's a projected increase for the current steam cost and an increase in the over-recovery amount in the deferred steam cost. The net revenue impact is projected to be an increase of $115,201, approximately a 2.79% increase to the average bill. This increase is driven by a significant reduction to the overall collected balance in the deferred account and a modest decrease in natural gas prices. I can pause now for questions or proceed to the recommendation.
Yeah, if you can go to your recommendation, that'd be great.
Great. Staff has reviewed the filing and has found it contains all necessary exhibits and no material errors. Staff recommends the application be deemed complete and that the application be granted on less than statutory notice.
Commissioner Gilman,
I agree.
Commissioner Plant.
I also agree.
As do I. Thank you, Mr. Lay, for your quick and incisive presentations. Greatly appreciate it.
Have a great day, everyone.
Yeah, you too. Ms. Crandall, miscellaneous proceedings to look at how PIP gets implemented.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kelly Crandall with the advisory team, joined by Aaron McLaughlin from Council. Are you all able to hear me? I'm getting some glitches on my end.
We can hear you fine.
All right, thank you. I will not be as brief as Mr. Lay, unfortunately, but I'll walk you through a few things today. In January, we held a Commissioners Information meeting to discuss some initial staff ideas for work on income qualified bill assistance and energy programs in 2025, and to hear you all's feedback and priorities. So at that CIM, we presented information and lessons learned from recent projects, which includes the 2024 evaluation report for percentage of income payment plan programs, or PIP programs, as well as the utility bill help program, which refers income eligible customers to utilities PIP programs based on their enrollment in other Department of Human Services programs. The Commission expressed support for ongoing collaborative efforts to streamline program enrollment, but also expressed a desire for staff to continue identifying a range of potential improvements to PIP programs, both large and small. Since that time, we've been refining our initial proposals around, which initially included extensive stakeholder work to craft a more staged process that addresses commissioner feedback while also managing staff and stakeholder workload, given the significant number of energy cases the commission's hearing. As a first action in proceeding number 23M-0013EG, the commission extended the timeline for the next third-party evaluation of PIP programs to occur so that there can continue to be time to vet evaluations from the most recent report. The commission also closed that proceeding, stating that additional actions would occur in new dockets that are more fit to purpose. And so given that, I'm here today to discuss next step for the commission to consider in the process of getting to more refined PIP program rules. And I can answer questions or proceed to recommendations.
Sounds good.
Thank you. So I'll break my recommendation overall into three parts. First, I'll explain the issue and the overall procedural recommendation, which relates to opening a miscellaneous proceeding. Next, I'll describe filing requirements that I would recommend the commission should direct through that proceeding. And then finally, I'll place this action into overall context with income qualified programs work. So moving into the first recommendation on overall procedural issues, pursuant to Electric Rule 3412F and Gas Rule 4412F, each utility shall maintain effective terms and conditions in its tariffs on file with the Commission describing its low-income program. In the course of reviewing the 2024 PIP evaluation report, implementing the utility bill help program, and reviewing electric and gas utilities' most recent PIP tariffs, and a more specific list of advice letters and tariffs are listed in the draft decision you all have seen. Staff have identified some discrepancies in how utility programs are operated versus whether or how those steps are characterized within publicly available tariffs on file at the Commission. Certain information is missing, unclear, and lacks some cross-references. And there's also just the added challenge that tariff changes are often filed piecemeal with a page at a time rather than incorporating all effective program terms. So the issue isn't that tariffs don't exist, they do exist. There are some issues that we found in terms of some lack of clarity and some missing information. So advisors recommend the Commission open a miscellaneous proceeding that requires electric and gas utilities to file revised PIP tariffs pursuant to Electric Rule 3412F and Gas Rule 4412F. And we recommend the Commission join Atmos Energy Corporation, Black Hills Colorado Electric and Black Hills Colorado Gas, Colorado Natural Gas, and Public Service Company of Colorado as indispensable parties to this proceeding. Procedurally, we recommend that the Commission direct utilities to file updated program tariffs and supporting information in new advice letter proceedings on not less than 30 days notice. These advice letter filings should be submitted ultimately within 90 days. Advisors then recommend the commission close this proceeding except to the extent it remains a repository to receive some limited administrative filings, specifically notices that the utilities have complied with the direction to file new advice letters, and then notices after the PIP tariffs filed in those new advice letter proceedings become effective. So that would be the first item for you all's review and approval.
Commissioner Gilman.
Yeah, thanks, Ms. Crandall. I think that's a appropriate way to move forward.
Commissioner Plant.
I agree.
As do I. Ms. Crandall.
Thank you, commissioners. So the second item proposes some specific direction to inform the kinds of information utilities should include in their next advice letter and tariffs. So this is going to be the longest item here because we want to make sure it's clear what kinds of issues that we've identified. Based on review of current rules, the 2024 PIP evaluation report, lessons learned from the utility bill help program, content at CIMs over the last couple of years, and utilities tariffs, advisors recommend the commission direct the utilities to provide certain clarifying information when they present these revised tariffs. So the first thing is just recommending that utilities confirm that their PIP or energy affordability programs fully comply with currently effective electric rule 3412 or gas rule 4412 as appropriate. Where the utilities program implementation does not fully comply with those rules, the utility should bring the program into compliance with this filing, reference the currently effective waiver, or request a waiver if one is needed. Second, we recommend the commission direct utilities to ensure that tariffs are updated to address not only the standard issues like rates and cost recovery required under the rules, but also to provide at minimum relevant information about program eligibility, enrollment, energy burden and benefit calculations, levelized and budget billing, arrearage credits, and disconnection protections. In filing this information, utilities should be required to fully disclose all internal steps or screens that are used to review a customer's account and to determine their ability to participate in PIP programs and to receive a particular level of benefits. We recommend that utilities be directed to fully disclose what actions by a customer could result in that customer's removal from the program, including non-payment and other actions. And these are an example of certain things that may technically be listed in other parts of tariffs, but there isn't an effective cross-reference or a description consistent with the program. While the draft decision you all have seen includes more specifics, another example of a problem staff identified in implementing the utility bill help program is that there's a lack of clarity about how energy burden might be calculated if a customer participates in one or more tariffed rate programs or energy programs. There's some ambiguity in wording around the duration customers can be enrolled in a program, and that is particularly important as the rules don't preclude utilities from enrolling customers for longer than a year. And we've also identified some examples of unclear language around income eligibility thresholds and auto enrollment, and practices around arrearage credits and disconnection protections that are not always fully explained. Advisors recommend the commission encourage utilities to collaborate on producing their revised tariffs so that they can be easily reviewed and compared by staff. We also recommend the commission direct utilities to draft their tariffs in plain language as much as possible. And in bringing this forward, we emphasize that while there are many positives in how utilities programs are being implemented, I think the utility bill help experience has really shed light on exactly how challenging it is to explain to a customer how their benefit is calculated and how the program ultimately works, which has also made the evaluation process challenging. And this clarity is extremely important because there are now several entities that are referring customers to utility PIP programs pursuant to both statute and rule. Finally, to create a clear and complete package in the new advice letter filings, advisors recommend the commission also direct utilities to submit some related information. Again, this is for clarity and completeness, and that would include a copy of their most recent annual PIP report, copies of all letters or communications provided to customers regarding PIP programs, a sample bill that identifies any riders or credits received, copies of any additional forms that customers must fill out to enroll if those forms are used, and a table that compares income eligibility levels and enrollment pathways for income qualified bill assistance programs to other energy programs for income qualified customers or customers in disproportionately impacted communities, which, as described further in the decision, would draw from information provided in proceedings 22AL-0530E and 22M-0171, all in order to create a consistent and comparable resource.
Commissioner Gilman.
Thanks, Ms. Crandall, for that fulsome description, and I agree with your recommendation.
Commissioner Plant.
I also agree.
As do I.
Thank you, commissioners. And I just have one, a third and final item, which is to talk a little bit about some context for this proceeding that might be informative to the future filings. So at the January CIM, you all discussed your interest in understanding how to continue to evolve the utility PIP programs. And I think you sent a strong message that because energy assistance funding is limited, it would be beneficial for utilities and other stakeholders to strive to be efficient and identify ways to improve and target program participation in thoughtful ways. And so the commission discussed whether there may be pre-existing data utilities collect, such as the frequency customers receive disconnection notices, or whether they previously called the utility seeking assistance that could be used to enroll customers more proactively. Staff also raised some initial ideas for larger changes to PIP programs, including reducing or removing energy burden requirements, converting the program from fixed credit to fixed payment, considering geospatial enrollment, and other options. And so while I can't speak to any specifics, I understand there's interest among utilities to actively explore some of these ideas. Advisors think that piloting changes to the PIP program could be a really powerful tool to identify what kinds of program improvements are going to make sense and to look at more potential rules changes. So while the commission can't control whether these future advice letters would be disputed when they're filed, advisors recommend the commission emphasize in its decision that the direction to file new advice letters here is really intended to create a common understanding of the nuanced utility-specific program implementations within the current rules framework. It's not intended to trigger major program revisions, and ideally there will be collaborative engagement before filings are made. And so we further recommend the commission explicitly state an intention that the action being taken in this proceeding would not preclude utilities from filing advice letters or applications as appropriate to test creative and productive changes to PIP programs.
Commissioner Gilman.
Thanks, Ms. Crandall. I agree with your recommendation.
Commissioner Plant.
I agree as well.
As do I. And is there more, Ms. Crandall, or can that be an ABC order?
That can be an ABC order.
Thank you, Ms. Crandall.
Thank you very much, commissioners.
Commissioner Gilman, final thoughts before we adjourn?
Nothing additional, thanks.
Commissioner Plant.
Nothing additional. Thanks a lot.
With that, we're adjourned. Thanks all.